I'm Theron Q Ramacharaka. I was, what was it, yesterday or so? That's, yesterday or so, I posted a video called Drugs and Personal Evolvement. At least that's what it's called for now, anyway. That's what I called it yesterday. It's still that. All right, so unless I changed it by the time you see this video, it's called Drugs and Personal Evolvement. So this is like a Drugs and Personal Evolvement 2, number 2. So I thought it's a good idea when we're considering drugs and personal evolvement. And by drugs, I'm referring to any any medications, any recreational drugs, any street drugs, any illegal drugs, any legal drugs. I think we can argue about what is a drug and what isn't a drug. We could probably do that all day for some specific cases, but anything, I'm going to say that when it comes to recreational, anything that makes you feel different, perceive differently, move differently, react differently, and then I'm going to call it a drug. Just fit it in here. Okay, so we'll just fit it in because I have something to say that does, in fact, cover all of those things. And that is that none of them enhance, instrument, or orchestrate, or are sufficient for, or are necessary to bona fide personal evolvement. There may be some, I acknowledge there may be some accidental steps toward personal evolvement made, kind of like inadvertent steps made, or making a step forward in association with some kind of drug use, kind of like through the back door, or went into it in reverse, but you did make a step forward. Okay, except for those, then I say across the board, none of it actually does that. I mean, or helps you to, or is directly connected with personal involvement. Now you may be taking a psychiatric medication that puts you in a better, a frame of mind whereby you are able to realize more about the nature of yourself. Are able to recognize the true self within. Let's say you're on antidepressants and they're helping you. Okay, but then again, in the long run, that drug is causing further problems. So, in the end, really help you get ahead. See, it wouldn't be directly. If the two events did in fact occur in a sequence, with the medication having come into the picture first, then I acknowledge that. But it's not a direct connection, you see. It's kind of like inadvertent that kind of thing would happen. Okay, so that sort of thing notwithstanding, none of them assist you. So I thought, before I ramble on too much further in review, from a different point of view, but in review, now it's time to move on to the real point of this video, and that is take a look. It would be a good thing to move forward in understanding the thing we're talking about anyway, like drugs, medications, all right? It's like we're either medicating an illness, medicating a functional, all right, a functional or a structural obstacle in life, having to do with our biology or our perceiving, our biology or our physiology. Okay? Now, let's go back to where this whole idea of using things around us to enhance our to enhance our quality of life. looking outside of ourselves. Well, people have been doing that for a long time, looking outside of themselves, somewhere into the environment, you know, looking for things that enhance quality of life. Been doing that widespread for a long time, right? Okay, so at what point do we move forward from that notion to where the notion of medication begins? Or has it already begun right from the start, in that very first thing we just set forth and laid down? That people are up in for a long time, widespread, like looking outside themselves for things that enhance the qualities of their lives. So, at some point here, we have to have a subset of that and call that those things that we're finding outside, or the search for medication. What does medication really do? I could look it up in a dictionary right now, but I'm not going to. This video is going to be too long if I do things like that. But now consider, let's just relax a little bit, you know, loosen the view a little, be a little bit more liberal, or a little less specific in our terminology. Just loosen up the meaning a little bit here of medication, and of the word medication, and just accept that, okay, we kind of know what we're talking about by medications, but what was our first notion back in time? You know, the widespread general consciousness notion of, I don't think medication would have even been a word. I mean, some very, we're going back thousands of years here, folks. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it would be a matter of finding things in the environment that heal us in some way. And then there would be the group of things that gives us psychotropic, you know, they're psychotropic in nature. In nature. You see, in nature. Okay, these things would be, they would do such and so, they would be such and such a type of thing to us in nature, by their nature. Well, there's the big dividing line. It's a totally different one than we were suspecting a few minutes ago. It's, where did we cross over from in nature and by nature and natural for us to do? Well, you can see that it doesn't take long to veer off that by way of technology. Now, I don't mean, you know, like wires and circuit boards when I say technology. That's a very narrow definition. That's not the way I'm using it. That's too narrow. There's technology in the invention of the wheel. You know, there's technology in sliced bread. Well, anyway, you see, if we look at medication and drugs from that perspective, from where the notion from the natural result of the natural consideration of such things in this world. All right, look from there to what we're dealing with right now. You see, anybody who says they're a naturopath or whatever, anything, you know, we're really by now in this world working against all of that change from nature for such a long time, so widespread that just adopting, you know, like realizing what this point of view, this whole idea of medication and drugs really roots in, you know, how it naturally arose in our consciousness. just naturally did long ago. The difference between that conception, right? The natural one, the one we're after, the one we were after in the first place, the one we're still trying to find. All right, so if we just narrow the category down to drugs and medications, the difference between how we relate to them as they are today and the way we are now today compared to then, you see, then administration of such methods, if the correct ones, all right, they worked. If the correct ones, well, then they worked. You see, that's just natural to the whole thing. That's by definition, kind of like. It's going to work if it's the right one. But now, consider, we don't have that one-to-one connection with it, that direct connection with it anymore, by far. Because of all the time, because of all the changes, because of all the widespread application of something totally different, you see. The nature got left out because, the technology took over. But anyway, the direct connection was lost. So right now we're battling against all of that to try to apply any methods that more closely than otherwise correspond with the original thing outside oneself, and the original attitude about it, the original connection with it, just inherent direct connection. It's not like we can just go back to nature one day in any kind of therapy, drug use, anything like that. We can't do it because, I don't know, the phrase, that's not our culture, comes to mind. Well, all right. So, be aware, and try to think. Try to adopt that more, the whole universe is alive. All the universe is alive. We had just, here's another awareness of that, another instantiation of the results of that for us as we're personally evolving. Just having contemplated what I'm saying here is a slight step forward in personal evolvement. Slight, however slight. Some step was taken in your awareness or out of it. All right, so again, these drugs, as you can see, the way things stand, drugs are temporary. They are shortcuts to false samadhi. And they can do damage. And in general, they do. Yeah, they do damage. They do damage. They hold you back in the long run. But then again, like I was saying, like blood pressure medication and so forth, to make a good life, if you're on blood pressure medication, and it's probably prolonging your life, or giving you a better quality of day, a better quality of mind set, so forth, well then, do well with your time. Do well with your time. Make sure that in the end, this thing that is happening in your life with the medications, the heart, and so forth, the blood pressure and all that, longevity, make sure that you're making it worth that circumvention or that intervention. Make your life worth it. Because that's a big difference. It's making a big difference. And if you don't make it worth it, if you don't actually get mileage out of it, as far as quality of life and productivity, well then you may not tip the scale over into the, beneficent side of that intervention and circumvention. Anyway, I'm Theron Q Ramacharaka. Be well.